Hello, can you hear me? Hi everyone, my name is Daniele Beccari. I'm in charge of travel products at Criteo. That means I need to make sure every line of code is optimized for the travel industry. Okay, so I will explain what we do in a very short form because I want to dig into the data and what's relevant for you today. So first thing, if this is working, yes, great. So first thing, I have a lot of data to share today. So all of the data you will see is actually available in the report you found on your chair, and I will share the link where you can actually download this report and other reports, so you don't have to take pictures of every single slide. You can concentrate on the content and the analysis, and then you can get the data from the report or from the online sector. So first of all, in the data we've analyzed, we've managed to extract information for more than 1 billion bookings. And when I say 1 billion bookings, it's a lot of bookings, right? It's much bigger than all the GDS and other very big companies around the world. The first question is, how did you get your hands on 1 billion bookings? So I have to explain where we got the data and how we managed to analyze it. So this means that the data you'll see is not a statistic, it's not a survey of 1,000 people over the phone or over email. It's a measure. Okay. Okay. It happens. So let's try to get into the data, and we'll see if you can hear me. Thank you for raising up the volume. So we tend to think of the funnel in online marketing as something very linear. I acquire people from one source, some users go down step by step, and then some users convert. This is actually completely wrong. Okay, and I'm sure you all know it's wrong because you feel that it's not giving you the right insights. It's not great to think that you're doing the job every day with something wrong. I know it's disappointing. It's like when you learn that great things don't actually exist in life. But the reality is this. The reality is that the funnel is very complex. It's multi-session. It's multi-device. People come to your websites again and again from multiple sources. So you cannot really attach one booking to one source and tell that this source has generated the booking. It's complex. The advantage is that by doing all of these sessions online, the users leave behind them a lot of traces, a lot of data. And if you can read this data, then you can extract information and you can try to understand what they're actually looking for, and then you can do the right thing and personalize much better the user experience. So in our platform, we measure more than 100 variables. You can see some obvious ones: the destination, the language, the number of sessions, the visits, the format of the websites and interactions, and so on and so on. But 100 variables measured for every user is a lot of data. We don't store it all because it would be too big, but we extract information. And we measure this on all of our client websites. And so this is where we have visibility into what people actually do. And we use this to answer a couple of questions, very important. When is the right time to invest in the travel life cycle? And the answer is different for every of our client, of course. So should you invest upfront in the inspiration phase, or should you actually invest when you get closer to the booking and the departure date? And what is the user looking for right now? So do they need flights? Do they need hotels? Do they need rental car? Are they looking for activities, or are they looking for packages? The answer depends and changes every minute. So we have to be constantly analyzing the data in order to provide the best possible advertising for that particular user at the right time. Okay, so this is where the source of data comes from. And again, I'll share the major highlights of our conclusions. So Criteo.com resources is the website where you can find this data and many other reports that can be interesting for you. So if you need to take one picture, it's this one. So you can take the picture of the address. And everything else you will see is actually found in the report or in other reports. Okay, can we go? Fine? Great. So the first, back, let's see if this is working. Okay, yeah? Let's go. So the first main observation we made is that mobile bookings have doubled in the space of 1 year, so between 2014 and 2015, and went from 12% to almost 24% in 2015. So again, this is bookings, okay? It's not mobile sessions, it's not number of searches done on search engines or on meta search, it's really bookings. Dinero, okay? People transacting and putting their credit card and buying something or booking something on a mobile device. So we're not just talking about mobile influencing the decision making, but then people going and booking everything on a desktop. We are really talking about people transacting on mobile devices. So 1/4 of bookings globally is now happening on mobile devices. Now, of course, this is a global average, and the behavior is very different from market to market. So you can see here some examples from Brazil with lower penetration up to Japan, South Korea with very high penetration. You see Spain is actually very much in the average, 23% of mobile bookings being done on mobile devices in Spain is exactly on the global average. But you will see one common thing across all of these markets is that this mobile booking penetration is increasing everywhere. Okay, so it might be lower and higher, but it is constantly increasing, and we see it increasing more and more. So I'll give you a bit of a forecast for the next 5 years later on. The other type of observation we've made is that if you look at it from a sector perspective, again, the penetration is very different from sector to sector, but again, it's increasing everywhere. So it's lower on rail and flights, but it's much higher on accommodation. And accommodation is already representing more than 1/3 of transactions. Okay, so again, the growth is constant in all markets, in all sectors, and it will continue. And in fact, if we also look outside of travel, we believe that the vast majority of transactions will be happening on mobile devices in about 5 years, if you look at travel and retail and all the other online shopping. Okay, so something else we've observed is that smartphones are actually much more strong and generate much more volumes than tablet. So this is already true in Americas and Asia Pacific. It's not yet the case in Europe, but we see it growing as well in Europe, and we have no doubt this will happen as well. So, and this is just because of the sheer number of smartphones. The size of smartphones is increasing, so people find it much more easily to transact on smartphones. And tablets is something that's limited to your couch or some limited environments. Everyone owns smartphones, not everyone owns tablets. So this is very interesting if you're thinking about how to optimize and deploy your marketing strategies. Smartphone is going to be the #1 channel, if it's not already the case today. And then we looked at whether people are booking on mobile web or mobile apps. So here you see the share of mobile bookings. So out of the 23% mobile bookings that we discussed before, about half have been done on mobile websites and half have been done on mobile apps. Now this is pretty interesting because it wasn't at all the case last year. If I look at last year we had about 12% of mobile bookings that were going through mobile applications. And this year, this share has grown to almost half of all mobile bookings. So something has really happened in the space of 12 months. So people getting used to transacting on mobile applications, mobile apps being easier to use, the payment processes being simplified on mobile apps, and mobile web remaining something pretty slow. So people tend to prefer booking on apps if it's available. So we've seen this as well. If you compare the conversion rates between mobile web, desktop, and mobile apps, we've been able to measure the difference. You can see that the conversion rates on mobile apps are much higher than they are on desktop and much higher than they are on mobile web. So again, apps now work. People like to book on apps as far as the apps are done well. Again, if the app is not working well, it's slow and it's patchy and it doesn't allow you to make an easy payment, of course, it will not work as well. But for clients who have invested in applications that were well done and easy to use, the penetration is there. the returns are there now. We then try to analyze if there is a different content or different types of services that people book on mobile compared to desktop. And what we've seen is we've found a couple of interesting insights. First of all, the average value booked on smartphone is much lower than you can see on desktop. So the way to read this chart, you see there's 100% here. This is the desktop average, and you can see how smartphones and tablets are generating bookings that are of lower value, but tablets are roughly in line with the desktop average, while the smartphone, which is the yellow bar, are 40 to 60% of the value of desktops. Okay, so users tend to book simpler transactions. Very high value transactions like multi-week packages or cruise and so on are not easily transacted on mobile devices. People still tend to go on desktops. But for ordinary transactions, maybe low-cost flights or hotels, apartments, mobile is there. It's the first device I have available with me. It's a no-brainer. I can transact on a mobile device. If you look at it from a check-in date perspective, then you can also see something very interesting. You see how mobile is really dominating the last-minute bookings. So the way you have to read this is the check-in date here, and then 1 day before, 2 days before, up to 7 days before the check-in. And you can see that the percentage of tablet and smartphone bookings is relatively stable until we get to the last 2 days, and then it really picks up. It really skyrockets. If you look at same-day bookings, 47% of same-day bookings for hotels are done on smartphones. And if you add the 11% on tablet, you get to almost 60% of bookings, same-day bookings, being done on mobile devices. Okay, so of course there are companies like Hotel Tonight and others who have invested in this. They've identified this trend, and it's clearly a really strong trend. All right, so I'll come to another observation we've made with regards to cross-device behavior. So cross-device behavior is basically the fact that users are looking at multiple devices when they're trying to come up with a decision up until the reservation. And what we've measured is something very interesting, because we have measured that about 50% of bookings have required 2 devices or more for the user to come to that booking, okay? But this percentage is actually very stable across any device. So we're not talking about people looking on mobile devices and going to book on on desktops. The same behavior happens in any direction. So also for people who have booked on mobile devices, half of those bookings have required an interaction with another device. For bookings on tablets, half of those bookings on tablets have required an interaction with another device. So this is pretty interesting, because it means that the cross-device behavior is really something that we do as almost it's becoming a norm. Maybe I'm looking at some ideas when I'm at home or in office, and then when I'm commuting or in the car, I look up more information on the same website, and then I take a decision and I book on one or the other device. But again, this cross-device behavior is very common, whatever the final device of booking. So how did we get to this measure? Because of course, comparing sessions on multiple devices is a pretty complex exercise. So I'll tell you very briefly how we do it. And of course, if you have more questions, we can talk about it later. But if you think about who can do well very good cross-device matching, you think of all the big guys like Facebook, Google, Twitter, basically anyone that has an authenticated user session, right? And also you. If you have a login on your website, you can identify the user when they're logging in from desktop or from mobile. So you are also able to do that. The problem is that the same user is moving across all of these different environments. They're not only on Facebook, they're not only on your website. And what we had to build is what we call the glue, or a universal matching platform that is putting this all together and collating information from multiple silos. So it's what we call the Criteo universal match technology that allows us to measure the effects of people visiting and spending time on one device and then converting on another device. So let's talk a little bit about the next 10 years. So first of all, I will give you a very quick forecast for where we see bookings happening in the next 5 years. Again, this is a global average, but we see in 3 years from now, we'll be almost at half of bookings globally being done on mobile devices. It's already the case in many countries in Southeast Asia that the majority of bookings is on mobile devices. So if you take China, if you take Indonesia, if you take Thailand, Malaysia, because those are mobile first markets, the majority of bookings is already on mobile devices. We think that within 3 to 5 years, the majority of bookings worldwide will be on mobile devices as well. So again, if you still don't have a mobile ready strategy, it's really time to think about it very, very hard. Now, looking a bit more broadly about what's going to happen in the next 10 years, let's just remember that technology changes very quickly. So if you think about it, 10 years ago, we were still using this type of bulky screens, but it sounds like ages ago. We were still using flip phones. Again, it sounds like ages ago, but the smartphone, the iPhone had not been released yet. So it's pretty hard to tell you exactly what will happen in the next 10 years. But we can take an educated guess about what will happen with information. If you look at the history of computing technology, we moved from a time where there was one big computer resource shared by multiple users to the personal computing time where each of us had one computer connected to the internet. And now we're moving into the age where each of us has multiple computing devices. It could be mobile, tablet, desktop, but also all the Internet of Things devices that are coming up. And all of these devices are connected. So which means that the amount of information we are producing is going to explode. We haven't seen anything yet, okay? We see this happening already, but the amount of information not only will grow exponentially, but also the amount of information that we will receive will grow exponentially. Our attention span will be limited to very, very, very focused information that makes sense for us. And this will create a lot of problems. I'll explain why, but also it tells us where is the solution. So if you look at already today what's happening, this shows you over the last 8 years where we spend time. So the blue bar in the bottom part is the time we spend on desktops. You see it's relatively static. The yellow parts on the top is the time we spend on mobile. So you see the time we spend on mobile has been added to the time we spend on desktop. We don't spend less time on average on desktop. We actually spend much, much more time connected to digital devices. So again, this is already happening today, and it will continue more and more in the future with more devices being connected. So what's the answer to this overload of information and maelstrom of marketing messages that we will be receiving in the coming years? Well, the answer is relevancy or irrelevancy if you're not doing it right. So what does it mean, relevancy? Let me show you a picture, and it should make it very clear for you. Okay? What is this? Can you see? Yeah. So what is this? This is when you get to any airport, you find a list of services. So is this advertising or not? Of course it's advertising. But you don't think it's advertising because it's perfectly relevant. You get to the airport, and right there, what you need is a transportation option to get to the city. So it's a service. This becomes very useful. But of course it's advertising. It's advertising private companies, right? So this is an example of relevancy. It's something that is so relevant that is useful. And you don't think it's advertising, you think it's a service. So relevancy is the answer to the bombardment of information that we will get in the coming years. Why is this good? Because from a user perspective, for you it's a service. Everything that's relevant, it's useful. Everything that's irrelevant is noise or even spam. But from an advertiser perspective, anything that's relevant means there will be a return on investment. Everything that's not relevant is a waste of budget. So relevancy is the goal. We all have to work towards making sure that whatever we do in terms of messaging is relevant for users. And this will take much more importance in the years to come. So I'll give you an example of how you can get more relevant in the future. So one of the typical ways that you segment users is by looking at demographics. So you can take middle-aged men, middle-aged women, teenagers, men, women, or families and business travelers and so on. By doing segmentation, what usually happens is that you create a sort of a stereotype of that particular segment, and you attach some services or products to this particular segment. So middle-aged men like sports and cars, and it's a first step towards making sure that you're giving relevant information. Everyone has been doing this for at least the past 50 years, great. But with technology, and as soon as you know a little bit more about users, then you can completely skip the segmentation step, and you can go to personalized information. So a middle-aged man likes sports? Yes, but which sport? It's tennis. Do they like cars? Yes, but it's which car? It's a Mercedes. So you can be much more specific. And the generic segmentation that you were applying doesn't make any sense. It's a stereotype. Again, it's a first step. It's good if you have nothing. But as soon as you can start personalizing and contextualizing the information, you get to a completely different dimensions in terms of relevancy and what you can offer to users. So try to move beyond segmentations and try to get much more specific on specific user needs. Great, and I think I'll have to close, so I'll just share this vision, which is a statement from the former CMO at Booking.com, Paul Hennessy. You might like it or not, you might like Booking.com or not, but there's no doubt they know something about marketing. And I'll let you read this through because it's exactly where the future is going. So he doesn't want to talk about advertising, he wants to talk about content or useful information that can help people make decisions. So again, we're talking about relevancy in this case. Great, so 2 more seconds. So just a very quick recap of the key messages from today. So first of all, mobile, smartphones in particular, will become the dominant way to buy. Maybe in 3 years from now, 5 years from now, but it will happen. So be ready for that. The second key message is cross-device as well is something very important that is going to happen more and more. So you need to be able to link information between multiple devices. The third key message is apps now work. So do an app, do it well, and you will see results. And as a final recommendation, just make sure that your marketing and your technology are working together in order to support all of these different new channels and new behavior. Great, thank you. I think we're right on time for once. So if you have any more questions, of course, I'll be available in the back and during the rest of the day. Thank you very much. I'll leave the floor to the next speaker. Thank you.